Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Yonit Arthur. I'm an audiologist and coach. You are on the Steady Coach. Today, we're going to be doing something a little different, dare I say, a little bit more fun than normal. Today, I'm going to be ranking all the different types of methods people use for recovery from neural circuit dizziness and other symptoms in a tier list. Now, I know I'm probably several years behind the trends, but this is actually a serious question that I get asked quite frequently. Hey, Yonit, I want to try a vagus nerve stimulator, or do I need to take SSRIs, or will vestibular rehab therapy help me, or will this kind of therapy help me? So I'm going to give you the long list of all the different methods of recovery that I've seen people use during neural circuit dizziness recovery, and I'm going to rank them on a tier list from D all the way up to S. So D tier would be the lowest tier, things that I don't think are very useful in recovery. Then C is a little better. B is things that are probably somewhat useful. A is high quality, solid recovery methods. And then S is the best of the best, things that I think really help people in neural circuit dizziness recovery. Now, before I jump into the list, it's very important for me to have you understand that I am cheering you on, and I want you to use whatever methods you find effective in your recovery. I'm going to do my best today to explain why I'm giving these various methods the ranking or tier that I'm giving them. But I want you to know that I have absolutely no judgment on you if you decide that a particular method that I rank as a D tier method is actually something you've found very helpful in your recovery. This is a very individual process. All of you are very different. So it is perfectly okay if some of the methods I think are helpful are less helpful for you, and vice versa. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about today, SSRIs and SNRIs. These are very commonly prescribed for those of you who are diagnosed with PPPD, persistent postural perceptual disorder, and much less commonly for those of you who have diagnoses like vestibular migraine or Maladie-Barkmann syndrome. The reason that these drugs are often prescribed for people with PPPD is we do have some pretty small scale studies that demonstrate a possible positive effect. Depending on which study you look at, some studies claim 50 or maybe even 70% of the people who take them benefit from them. But these, again, are very small, not well-controlled studies. And a recent review article concluded that the evidence for using SSRIs and SNRIs for PPPD is relatively poor. That said, I think some doctors continue to prescribe them because they think of these drugs as relatively low risk and potentially very high reward for the people who do respond to them. Now, of course, I'm not a medical doctor and I can't give you medical advice, but I can tell you what I've seen with my clients. And what I've seen has been very mixed. Some people find that they get a lot of benefit from them. In general, it seems to just reduce the anxiety a little bit, reduce some of the fear looping and the intrusive thoughts. And that makes it more possible for the person to do the other kind of work that I think is so important for recovery. And other people don't notice a benefit at all. And then there are still other people who react very poorly to the SSRIs, have all sorts of side effects and or withdrawal, and actually regret having taken them. All those things taken into consideration, I give SSRIs and SNRIs somewhere between a B and C tier as a method of recovery. It can quite possibly be helpful, and I've seen them be absolutely life-changing for some clients. So I fully support you if SSRIs and SNRIs are something you're going to choose to take during the recovery process. But please don't expect them to be a cure for PPPD. That's my main objection, along with the informed consent question. Objection number one, they should not be touted as a cure because they're not. They are supportive in helping you do the other things you need to do, like graded exposure, like losing your fear of symptoms, like addressing your stress bucket. And objection number two, I think people are often not given informed consent about the potential downsides of taking SSRIs. So just do your due diligence before choosing to take them. Next is cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. Cognitive behavioral therapy has been shown to be quite effective, especially, again, for PPPD, persistent postural perceptual disorder, less so for vestibular migraine, Not really so for Malte-de-Barkmann syndrome, but I think some of the strategies that are used in CBT are really excellent for most types of neural circuit dizziness, not as a comprehensive treatment plan, but as part of a treatment plan. A lot of the things you see here on my channel are based in CBT. Things like graded exposure, things like noticing the role that avoidance is playing in ratcheting up your fear, knowing what to do with intrusive thoughts and doubts. These are all things that come from CBT and can be very, very helpful. So I give CBT a B tier rating. Elimination and migraine diets. People who are entrenched in a biomedical way of thinking about neural circuit symptoms will often blame someone's diet or use vague terms like systemic inflammation or leaky gut or all sorts of other kind of meaningless but scary sounding terms to describe why they think your body is doing what it's doing with neural circuit symptoms. Those of you who are not new to my work know that my perspective on neural circuit symptoms is that while biological things may absolutely be playing a role and may have indeed been why your symptoms started in the first place, biological factors are not the main reason that your brain is still judging symptoms and triggers as dangerous and causing a continued cycle of fear, anxiety, stress, and symptoms. This is why you don't hear me talk about changing your diet, eliminating foods, going on a migraine diet. And in fact, my opinion on these diets is they are actively harmful. Now, I want all of you to be healthy. I want you to have nice, robust stress buckets, eating well, eating nourishing foods, eating whole foods, eating lots of vegetables, eating lots of fiber. These things are helpful for anyone, and I strongly encourage you to take care of your body. But when you're doing an elimination or migraine diet, you are assigning danger to certain foods. You can actually create food sensitivities by constantly monitoring your foods and worrying about them. I have seen many people harmed by these kinds of diets. I've seen people develop disordered eating because of these diets. And I've seen people, after having a very long period of restricted eating on these diets, have absolutely no change in their symptoms and actually feel worse because their anxiety and fear are a lot higher. Again, I very strongly encourage eating healthfully, but I don't recommend eliminating entire food groups or eliminating arbitrary healthy things like avocados and bananas because there's some mechanistic theory about why that could potentially cause a migraine. Our evidence base on this is very, very poor. The human trials on this stuff are small and not well controlled. There is almost certainly nothing wrong with you eating chocolate, avocados, bananas, cheese, and all the other things that you've eliminated from your diet, with the exception perhaps of substances that have a very direct impact on parts of your brains involved in the fear response, like caffeine and alcohol. And this is why I give elimination and migraine diets a D tier rating. Cold plunging. This is when you immerse your body in cold water, and this has the effect of temporarily kicking on your fight or flight system, and then afterwards, temporarily kicking on your rest and digest system. This can improve something called vagal tone. This simply means that your body gets better at switching out of high alert mode into rest and digest mode. As you can imagine, if you know anything about my work and why neural circuit dizziness happens, this can actually be helpful for people with neural circuit dizziness. And what I've seen from my clients is somewhat of a mixed bag. I've seen people have incredible help from this. It makes their stress buckets more resilient. Maybe they're not able to exercise because of symptoms, and this is a way to help the body learn to switch from being on fight or flight into rest and digest mode. And it also has a calming effect on people. That said, just like everything else we've talked about so far, and actually everything else we're going to talk about on this list, it's not a magic bullet. It seems to help some people, but if you're going to do it, just make sure, again, you're not approaching it like a fix or something that's going to stop symptoms. You're using it to support nervous system health. I give cold plunging a B tier rating. Vestibular rehab therapy. Many of you have gone through vestibular rehab. This is a specific kind of rehab that is designed for people who have vestibular disorders and dizziness. And this one's a little tricky because I think vestibular rehab is tremendously helpful, if not absolutely essential in some cases, and then in others, it's basically useless. So for those of you who had a unilateral weakness or some other kind of ear-based problem, or who've never gone through vestibular rehabilitation before, or who had some other kind of injury that led to your symptoms, like a concussion, then vestibular rehab therapy is solidly A tier, especially for the first 3 to 6 months. Once you've gone through 3 to 6 months of vestibular rehab, if it's not improving you anymore, then we're probably not using the right method and it's no longer an A tier option. Now, for those of you who have symptoms that are not reactive to triggers, some of you with Malte-Debarkmont syndrome fall into this category. Maybe there are others of you out there with visual symptoms that fall into this category. Or if you've gone through vestibular rehab before for one round, you've already completed it, then vestibular rehabilitation is no longer in the A tier. It's really more of a C tier option, because in the end, if it's not actually helping you, then it's really just focusing your attention on what's wrong with you and drawing your attention more and more to monitoring symptoms, which is exactly the opposite of what you want for neural circuit dizziness recovery. This brings me to the Optokinetic stripe exercise, which is related to vestibular rehab. This is a particular kind of exercise that is designed specifically for people who have rocking, bobbing, swaying that gets better with passive motion. And as a way of reducing symptoms, at least temporarily, and helping your brain get a handle on some of the fear and anxiety, I rank this a solid B tier option because it helps around 50% of people according to the research. However, it does not seem to have lasting effects for most people. That is why, again, it's really useful as a way of relieving symptoms. And I have an at-home version that I'll link to in the video description. And you can also find by just searching for the Steady Coach Optokinetic stripe exercise on YouTube. But symptom relief does not mean recovery. These are two separate things. Something that gives you temporarily symptom relief does not mean that it's actually getting you to lasting recovery, which is where I want you. So you are welcome to try it if indicated and you don't have any contraindications by your doctor. Again, ask your doctor about it first, but you're welcome to try it. If you get symptom relief, great. You're still going to want to work on all the other things I talk about on my channel, including fear of symptoms. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't really set you back. It's not really dangerous. So this is a solid B tier rating. All right, here's a controversial one. Migraine medication. Some of you are given migraine medication because you have a diagnosis of vestibular migraine or suspected migraine. And I've seen these migraine medications help some people, but I've also seen many people who have not been helped by the medication, as evidenced by the fact that a lot of you are here on YouTube watching this channel. If these kinds of medications worked well, there would be no need for me to have a channel and explain all the things that I explain here. Now, again, I recognize, and you should recognize, I have a bit of a bias because I'm only seeing the people who have not been fully helped by migraine medication. There may be many people out there who have been helped and don't need my channel, so I never hear from them. But my sense of it is that migraine medication is very much hit or miss, something you may be open to trying, and that's reasonable. But my expectations aren't very high from them based on what I've seen from my clients. So I'm going to give migraine medications somewhere between a B and C rating. Chiropractic and acupuncture. These can be really lovely as ways of calming your nervous system and helping relieve symptoms. So for that, positive points. But the problem with chiropractic and acupuncture care in many cases, not all, is that the messages you are also receiving from the providers is that there's something physically wrong with you and that they're doing some kind of physical manipulation on you to fix the thing that's wrong. The problem with that is that tends to crank up the alarm bells and cause your brain to continue to think that there's something horribly wrong with you, that the triggers and symptoms are still dangerous. For that reason, although I completely support you if you're able to use acupuncture and chiropractic just as a way to get some symptom relief. I give them a C tier because my general experience has been that they don't really seem to help people get out of symptoms in the long run. And unfortunately, they come with the side effect of making people feel like there's something wrong with them. Just want to note here that I'm not anti-chiropractic or acupuncture at all by any means. This is just specifically for the treatment of neural circuit dizziness. Strength training. I've talked about strength training at length in other videos, so I'm going to just link to those videos in the description here and not go into a long explanation. Long story short, strength training is one of the absolute best things you can do as someone who's recovering from neural circuit dizziness. It helps reset how your brain is using various information from different senses and helping you balance and orient. It is S tier, and if you have any doubts about that, strength training is a solid S tier. If I had my way, every single one of you would be doing it. Vagus nerve stimulators. These are devices that deliver some kind of stimulation to the vagus nerve, and the idea behind this is it's supposed to increase your nervous system flexibility. So let's break this down just a little bit. Your nervous system essentially has two modes, and I know I'm really oversimplifying here, but for the sake of this discussion, the two modes are fight or flight, or the sympathetic response, and rest and digest, or the parasympathetic response. One of the big markers of health is nervous system flexibility. How easily can your nervous system go into fight or flight when needed, and how easily can it come out of fight or flight and back into rest, digest, and recover mode. Again, this is a marker of health. So the marketing teams behind vagus nerve stimulators say, hey, when we stimulate your vagus nerve, we're increasing its tone, meaning it's going to be better and stronger at getting into parasympathetic mode, which again is a good thing. The problem is that metric, although it is a marker of health, does not necessarily translate into causing health. In other words, when you have a flexible vagus nerve, that is a sign of health. But just because you artificially make your vagus nerve more flexible with a device does not mean that you are becoming more healthy as a result. These devices are also relatively expensive and often use predatory marketing tactics that I don't like. However, I have had a small subset of clients who have found them helpful. My general approach to recovery from neural circuit dizziness is you don't want to over-focus on doing physical things to help yourself recover, because naturally that tends to lead people to over-focus on outcomes like symptom reduction, which I know is the main reason you're here, but if you're making that your goal, you're going to have a wild ride with ups and downs and dips, and you're going to not focus enough on the mental and spiritual aspects of healing that are so important. That all being said, because I have seen some people use vagus nerve stimulators as a way to help give themselves feedback about what it feels like to be really stressed out and what it feels like to calm down, and help train themselves to know how to calm down effectively, I'm giving them a C tier. Emotional awareness and expression. I've talked about this a whole lot on my channel. Emotions, feelings are signals that are important. They contain important data that you need to be able to use to help address your own needs, know your truth, set boundaries, and make good decisions in life. It doesn't mean you need to follow every impulse that feelings are giving you, but without access to the data from emotions, you are not going to function as well in the world, and you are going to be much less resilient. Emotional awareness and expression is one of the foundational components of all of my work, and there's more and more research showing its effectiveness in a variety of different neural circuit symptom conditions, including fibromyalgia and migraine. Emotional awareness and expression gets an S tier rating from me. Similarly, self-compassion. This is your ability to develop a better relationship with yourself, one that's not based on shame and guilt that cranks up the alarm system in your nervous system, one that's not based on shame and guilt, which tends to increase the alarms and make yourself feel much more threatened, Of course, that can cause your brain to think of everything as more threatening. Self-compassion is a way of teaching yourself how to be safe with yourself at all times. I've said before, the only person that you are with 24 hours a day, the only danger signal you're potentially with 24 hours a day is yourself. And if you can relate to yourself in a kinder, more compassionate way, that's a huge and very prevalent safety signal in your life. S tier rating for self-compassion. Exposure and response prevention. This is a type of therapy that's often used for obsessive compulsive disorder. And in my work with neural circuit dizziness, I have found that many people without any history of really major anxiety problems or obsessive compulsive disorder develop obsessive compulsive type thought patterns as part of neural circuit dizziness due to the anxiety that is the natural result of feeling disoriented. I call this neural circuit dizziness induced obsessive compulsive disorder, or NCD induced OCD. I have to come up with a shorter name for that. But what this means for you practically is that many of you are dealing with intrusive thoughts, doubts, and what ifs that you've never had to deal with before. And many of you are responding to these what ifs, doubts, and obsessive thoughts with reassurance seeking, with obsessive researching, with trying to solve the problem. Exposure and response prevention teaches people how to sit with the anxiety and discomfort and not try to fix the obsessions, intrusive thoughts, etc. It is incredibly effective for obsessive compulsive type patterns, and I highly recommend using methods like these if you are experiencing obsessive compulsive thoughts during your recovery from neural circuit dizziness. I give ERP, or exposure and response prevention, an A tier rating. Positive affirmations. Okay, so this one might be a bit of a controversial take. There is no doubt that being stuck in a cycle of being completely helpless, hopeless, and unhappy is not helpful for recovery. But at the same time, bypassing with trying to manifest positivity and trying to force yourself to feel positive when you don't is not helpful either. This is often the same problem that got you into neural circuit dizziness in the first place. You were busy bypassing your difficult feelings and putting extra stress on yourself in the process. So while I think it can be helpful to have certain mantras that you can use to help yourself know that things are okay, that you're safe, that this is just a prediction error, I don't want you to constantly repeat them as though they are a prayer. They should never be used at the expense of you recognizing and honoring the feelings that you're actually having. Positive affirmations get a B or C tier rating from me, depending on how you're using them. Positive affirmations alone get a C tier rating from me, but I think they can be used in an A tier way if you've personalized them to yourself and deeply believe and feel the things that you're saying to yourself. Somatic tracking. Somatic tracking is simply a way of learning to relate to your symptoms in a way that is less full of fear and resistance. You know a lot about it if this is not your first time on my channel. If this is your first time on my channel, you should pause the video right here, go to the video description. I have a video on somatic tracking as well as a bunch of somatic tracking practices. Somatic tracking is to this date my #1 video on YouTube. It is probably the most useful technique that I teach people. Some people get out of neural circuit dizziness using somatic tracking alone. S tier rating. Supplements. There are a few supplements that get a relatively high tier rating because they're low risk and potentially high reward. So solid B tier rating for things like magnesium, CoQ10, vitamin B2, and magnesium, and creatine. Everything else gets a D tier rating. I have not seen any other supplement give consistent results for people, although again, individual results may vary, and if there's a supplement out there that you're taking that you think is helping you, as long as it's not harmful, the only risk is you using it to try to fix symptoms and thinking of yourself as someone who's deficient in something or broken in some way. But if you're using it as a supportive thing that helps make you stronger and more resilient, then go for it. Endurance and cardio activities like running. This may be a controversial take as well. Now, in theory, I have to start by saying this. The best kind of exercise is exercise you enjoy and will do. If you love running, go run. You don't need to listen to the rest of what I'm going to say and stop yourself. However, I think there's a reason why in the coaching group that I've had for several years now, I have seen a very large number of endurance athletes. I see far fewer strength athletes. That may be because there are just simply more endurance athletes out there. But I think what is probably more likely is that endurance athletes may be due to the type of training they're doing or something in them that causes them to want to be endurance athletes, tend to push themselves to the point of absolute burnout. With power athletes, when you overtrain, you simply can't perform and your body forces you to rest for the most part. When you're an endurance athlete, you can push through and run through and keep going even when you have all sorts of injuries and all sorts of signs that your body's giving you that you need to rest, recuperate, and empty out your stress bucket. In addition, long bouts of moderate to high intensity cardiovascular exercise elevate the sympathetic response for a long period of time. And I think this is less helpful for people who are trying to develop better nervous system flexibility. So while exercise in general is definitely A or S tier, endurance exercise or cardiovascular exercise as a means of recovery from neural circuit dizziness is really C tier. That being said, if it gets you confident, gets you moving, and helps you feel less afraid of sensations, then it goes straight up to B or even A tier. Stress bucket management. This is the thing that I basically talk about in my entire channel. So you already know I'm going to give this an S tier rating. But what I'm talking about with stress bucket management is the recognition that the things that are going on outside you and inside you, your own reactions to and interpretations of the things that happen outside you, are all contributing to why your nervous system is so sensitized right now, why it's interpreting all of these triggers and symptoms as things that are so very dangerous. The key to recovery, in my opinion, is helping your stress bucket come back down. And that involves, yes, initially maybe reducing some of the outside stress, but in the long run, you should be able to handle lots of outside stress because the way that you react to, interpret, and respond to stress needs to change. And that often has to do with how you relate to yourself and other people, as well as how you relate to other stressors in your life. Stress bucket management, in my opinion, is the most underrated and important aspect of healing from neural circuit dizziness and any other kind of neural circuit symptom. Big time S tier. And if you want to learn more about how to do that, again, I talk about this at length in the free course that again is linked in the video description below. Okay, so that covers a lot of the recovery methods, but there are probably a whole bunch more you have questions about. So let me know in the comments if you have other methods you want me to rank in another tier list like this one, or if you have questions about anything else. I love hearing from you. Please also like this video, share it, and subscribe to my channel. These things really help me reach more people. I hope this was helpful and informative to you, and I will see you soon. Take care. Bye.